Hi everyone, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. I'm your host, Dr. Haider Shah. On behalf of Kalwas, I would like to welcome all of you to this webinar. Thank you very much for joining us. Today we have another very interesting topic, and I'm really honored to welcome and introduce our distinguished guest speaker who is going to talk about the top challenges of HR in tourism post COVID 19. The tourism industry has been severely impacted by the pandemic, and the HR departments have been tasked with addressing new challenges in managing the workforce, from health and safety concern to remote work arrangements. HR professionals in the tourism industry have had to adapt to new ways of working and managing staff. So, in this webinar, we will discuss the top challenges faced by them and as well as the strategies of overcoming these challenges. So, we will get the best insights, information, right guidance, and knowledge about all these things because we have an expert with us in today's this session. So, stay tuned because an amazing stuff are coming ahead in this session. So, before we start, I would like to thank Kalwas for arranging such enlightened sessions, for their support, and providing us such a wonderful platform. The aim of Calvas is to give you the opportunity to connect and interact with world renowned speakers, academic leaders, teachers, authors, researchers, experts, professionals, and businessmen to learn from their views, experiences, and suggestions, which will create an impact and will enable you to learn and develop yourself in order to grow and transform individually, as well as to contribute to the world at large. As our slogan is come, learn, and share knowledge. So today we have a very special and distinguished guest speaker. He is a well-known personality in academia and industry. He has a vast experience and we always see him on different platforms while contributing to the field and world. Moreover, through his great knowledge and wisdom, people are getting the right guidance and knowledge. Above everything, he always extends helping hand and popular for sharing his knowledge. So let me introduce him formally. He has obtained his PhD from Griffith University, Australia, and has over 15 years of experience in the higher education sector. Prior to his current role with the TUA, has held several senior roles at leading institutions worldwide, including Executive Dean at the Education Center of Australia, acting Managing Director, Executive Dean at the Emirates Academy of the Hospitality Management in Dubai, Academic Director for RMIT University in Singapore, Director of Academic Affairs at Blue Mountains International Hotel Management School, and Associate Dean Research and Development at Taylor's University, Malaysia. He is the fellow of the International Center of the Excellence in Tourism and Hospitality Education and has been a board member of several global education associations. In addition to that, he has also extensive tourism and hospitality industry experience, having worked in the industry for more than 10 years. During his period, he worked in hotels, tourism, and event companies as well as the travel industry. Moreover, he's the author of more than 150 publications in leading tourism and hospitality journals and conference proceeding and is a member of the United Nations World Tourism Organization panel tourism experts. Last but not the least, he's a wonderful speaker, author, teacher, researcher, professional, a multi-dynamic person with the great qualities. Above everything, a great human being. So please help me in welcoming our guest, Professor Scott Richardson. Welcome to the Calvas platform and thank you very much for joining us, Prof.
Thank you, Dr. Haider. It's my great pleasure to be here.
Thank you so much, Prof. Thank you for sparing your precious time and sharing your knowledge with our audience from around the globe, Prof. Prof, now up to you. Yes, Prof.
Excellent.
Over to you, Prof. Thank you very much.
Excellent. Well, thanks, Dr. Haider. As I mentioned, it's a great pleasure to be here with you today to talk about a topic that is impacting hospitality and tourism globally at the moment and has been for the last 3 or 4 years since the global pandemic hit in early 2020. Um, what we're going to talk about today is some of the employment opportunities and how we can manage employee turnover amid COVID-19. And now, really, that we're at the back end of the COVID-19 pandemic, so things are opening up. You may have seen in the news recently that Emirates Airlines from the UAE has just recorded a record profit never seen before. So the tourism and travel industry is definitely back with a bang. But that brings with it a number of issues that the industry is dealing with around managing talent and managing staff. So let me get started. So the presentation. So we'll look at what's the current global outlook. We'll identify the role of HR in this current environment, and we'll identify some potential strategies that companies can use to keep and maintain and keep their staff happy. So as I mentioned, prior to COVID-19, which obviously interrupted the world in 2020, the tourism and hospitality industry was growing at a rapid rate, more than 1 billion international travellers travelling the globe each year. But during obviously 2020, a lot of global borders closed, and we weren't really allowed to travel for 12 to 18 months, and in some cases almost 2 years. So in the case of Australia, our international borders were closed to foreign travellers for approximately 2 years, which had a massive impact on the hospitality and tourism industry in Australia, but also the hospitality industry globally. A lot of hospitality providers, hotels, restaurants, airlines weren't allowed to operate. They weren't allowed to open. You would have probably seen the pictures of the airline graveyards where the airlines had gone and parked all of their aircraft out in the deserts in the Middle East or in the middle of America or the middle of Australia, because they just weren't able to use the fleets that they had. Luckily, we've now seen a lot of those have come out of hibernation, and we're starting to see more and more international routes start to open up. So the current outlook is quite positive again. We're seeing, as I mentioned, Emirates Airlines making record profit this year. So clearly there's an appetite to travel again. So the industry is looking very, very positive. And I think for students, for potential staff of the industry, things are looking very, very bright. So obviously, when we look at the global landscape, it's not just the COVID pandemic that has impacted the industry or continues to impact the industry. Obviously, we see this comment that change and uncertainty remain the only constants, meaning that it's nothing ever remains the same for too long. So one of the key issues that we find in the tourism hospitality industry is we're constantly dealing with risk. We're constantly dealing with issues that impact our viability as a business. So things like geopolitical conflicts. So in Europe at the moment, we have the Russia-Ukraine conflict that is happening, which is impacting travel and tourism, particularly in those Eastern European countries. We've seen issues between foreign governments. At the moment, the Australian and Chinese governments, for example, are having some issues, which is having an impact on the relationship between the two countries, and that impacts tourism. We're seeing inflation. So in most countries globally, inflation is outstripping growth. So in Australia this year, inflation is above 7%, and that is putting a huge emphasis or a huge burden on tourism hospitality organisations, because when inflation goes up by that much, then all of your products are going up. Everything you buy for your hotel is going up. So you also then have to increase your prices. And at what point does the price become unsustainable? We're seeing energy crises. So we're seeing a lot of different countries having problems with energy. Energy prices again have skyrocketed. In Australia, the cost of electricity, the cost of gas has doubled and tripled in some cases. Again, when we look at hotels and restaurants, they use a lot of power. If you're a 250 room hotel and you've got your air conditioning running constantly throughout the day and night, that's a lot of power that you're consuming. So again, that impacts the cost of doing business. Natural disasters. We're seeing seems to be a lot more natural disasters, floods, cyclones, earthquakes. These types of things around the globe are happening seemingly more and more frequently, and again impacts very heavily on our industries. And in some countries, we also have inconsistent regulatory frameworks. So we're seeing those political issues come into play as well. So when we look at where we're at currently, for fully vaccinated travellers, there's more than 140 countries are now fully open to travellers again. So realistically, the world is back open. As long as you've met the vaccination requirements for COVID-19, and different countries may have different views on what fully vaccinated means. But in Australia and in a lot of other countries that I am aware of, that means at least 2 doses of the COVID vaccine. So the world has started travelling again. We've seen, if you're looking at airfares, you'll obviously notice that the airfares are really quite high at the moment, making it quite challenging to travel. But definitely the world is back open again. So when we look at the impact on the global hospitality and tourism industry of the COVID-19 pandemic, in 2020 alone, there was almost $1 trillion in revenue lost across the globe. And that's a fairly conservative estimate by McKinsey and Company. The global estimates, indirect revenue losses are well into the trillions of dollars. So it's been a massive impact globally for the economy around the world. In the US alone, occupancy rates dropped by more than 20% in 2020. And the majority of that was due to the lack of international travellers. As I mentioned, with the international tourist arrivals in 2019, there was well over 1 billion travellers worldwide. That dropped by 72% in 2020. So again, massive impact on our industry. And according to a survey by the AHLEI, the Australian American Hotel Lodging Association, 71% of hoteliers in 2020 stated that they could not survive in business without further government assistance. So we did see around the globe a number of government initiatives to help support tourism hospitality organisations through this period. Obviously, the pandemic also greatly affected employment in the hospitality industry. In the US alone, they lost over 8 million jobs just between February and April of 2020. And that was just in the US. Globally, it was estimated that there was around 350 million jobs were lost in tourism and hospitality during 2020. The Asia Pacific region was probably the hardest hit by the pandemic as far as tourism and hospitality goes. Revenue declines in that region were down by 60.3% compared to 2019. So massive impact on the tourism and hospitality industry. However, what we like to say with any crises is we need to look at what are the positives of the crisis. And one of the great benefits or the great things that have come out of the pandemic is the adoption of technology in the hospitality industry. So we're now seeing a focus on contactless services, mobile check-ins, virtual experiences, and we're seeing a lot more of these happening too, which not only ensures that our customers are safe, but it also means that it can be a much more streamlined and quick process to check in and check out. You can use QR codes to order your meals at restaurants. So there's a whole range of ways that these new technologies have really helped the hospitality industry progress their technological advancements over the last couple of years. The industry is quite well known to be a late adopter of technology. Quite often the industry is a little bit behind other sectors and other industries when we look at the adaptation of technologies. So it's been a good thing that's come out of the COVID-19 pandemic is that advance in technological usage within the hospitality industry. So in globally, the industry slowed and in many cases halted almost totally, with the borders shut, with lockdowns. Restaurants, cafes, coffee shops, hotels weren't allowed to operate. Some hotels were able to pivot and were able to become the quarantine hotels in different locations. So in Australia, in the major cities, Sydney, Melbourne, Brisbane, there were several hotels that were converted completely to the quarantine hotels, which were used for travellers that were returning to Australia, and they would have to stay in the quarantine hotels for at least 14 days before they were allowed to enter the country. So some of the hotels pivoted and did quite well out of that, because obviously they were able to charge the government for those services. But for most of the other areas of the hospitality industry, they were very badly affected. However, as mentioned, the recovery is underway. We're now almost halfway through 2023, and we're almost 3.5 years since the start of the pandemic. So we have started to see the recovery. We've started to see people travel again, but this has also brought with it new challenges. So we're starting to see evolving customer trends. So what do our customers want? The experiences that our customers are demanding today in 2023 are actually very different to what they were demanding in 2019 and early 2020. So keeping up with what does our customer want, what does our customer need, has been a bit of a challenge. We're certainly seeing staffing shortages. As we mentioned, there was 300 million plus people were laid off in the industry during 2020. And many of those people have left the industry never to come back. They've gone and they've been able to secure positions and roles in other sectors and other industries, and they're not coming back to hospitality now that we're back open. So we're certainly seeing a staff shortage within the industry, and that's globally. I know definitely here in Australia, we're still seeing really bad staff shortages in hotels and restaurants. So massive impacts. As we started to emerge from COVID, obviously effectively scaling up to meet customer demand. So how much do you reopen? How quickly do you reopen? Do you reopen parts of your business? Do you reopen the whole hotel? So that has been a challenge for hospitality businesses. And because of the staff shortages, we're also seeing and hearing reports of poor service experiences. Because hotels, restaurants, cafes have had to employ staff that potentially were not trained and didn't have the skills required to do the services, people are actually complaining about the level of service that's actually on offer. So there's been quite a few challenges, not only COVID, but also around recovering from COVID as well. This year is a transition year for many segments. And as I mentioned, the availability of enough qualified labour is a major concern. Many of the hotels, restaurants, cafes that I talk to are very, very concerned about being able to attract good talent and qualified talent into their businesses. COVID-19 obviously comes on top of an already undersupplied market in many areas. So we already had a lack of market supply in certain regions, and this has only been exacerbated by COVID-19. And as I also mentioned earlier, staff have left the industry for more crisis-resistant industries, and therefore they aren't coming back to the industry, which is exacerbating that problem. Obviously, we know that employees are the key point of difference within any hospitality business. So, hotels can build fantastic infrastructure, but then your competitor across the road can build infrastructure that's exactly the same. So our employees are of critical importance to the industry. Without good quality, experienced, qualified staff, we simply won't be able to compete. So obviously one of the variables that's most under the managed influence is the employees. And we can see that employees are the service. They are the organization. They are the marketers. They are the brand. So it's really, really important that hospitality tourism organizations really focus on employees' needs, employees' training and development, and obviously looking at how we can upskill employees is very, very important. One of the things that we also talk about here is the power of one. So one person can make a huge difference in the life of a customer, whether that's a housekeeper, whether it's the person that's doing lifeguarding at the pool, the person checking you in, or the person at the restaurant. Every encounter in hospitality and tourism counts. So if one of our customers has one poor experience, that can impact the entire experience that they've had with our organization. So every employee makes a difference. And certainly when I was working in the industry, one of the key things that I tried to get across to my staff was that every single employee in the hotel or in the business was just as important as everyone else. Without each other, we don't have a product and we don't have a good service that we're offering to our guests. So everybody from the cleaner to the housekeeper to the person that cleans the pool, right through to the general manager, CEO, everyone makes a difference. So we need to make sure that we are focusing on our employees and we're focusing on their development, we're focusing on their capabilities. So obviously when we look at that, then the availability of qualified labour is a key issue that we're facing at the moment. So some of the issues that are related to managing HR in hospitality, and these are not necessarily COVID-19 related. These are issues that have been facing the industry for a long time, but they've just been accentuated because of COVID. So we see things like lack of clarity in the roles that we do, a lack of training and development for our staff, conflict between customers and management, poor recruitment, inadequate technology. One of the big ones that always comes up is inadequate compensation and recognition. So globally, I think there's always a feeling that people that work in the hospitality industry are underpaid and not necessarily paid the salary that they deserve for the level of expertise and skills that they have. A lot of people look at hospitality workers and say that it's a very unskilled workforce. I completely disagree. I think there's a huge amount of skills that our staff need. So looking at how we can compensate and recognise our staff is going to be key. And in some organisations, the lack of empowerment or teamwork. So again, it's very important that we work well with our teams and that we empower our staff to make decisions that are related to the roles that they deliver. And as I mentioned, so this has all been a problem. I did my PhD 15 years ago, looking at some of these issues, and these issues were there 15 years ago and they're still there today. But we do see that COVID-19, as I said, has accelerated these issues. So very, very important that HR departments are really focusing on these areas. So obviously, when we look at how we want to gain a competitive advantage, and again, as the industry starts to open up, starts to expand again, we need to look at how we can create more value for our customers than our competitors. How do we make our offering more valuable to the client? So HR, again, plays a key role in this. Obviously, managing the employees effectively is very important. Getting employees trained in the skills that they need, or hiring the right people with the skills to start with, making the employees feel valued, motivating them to be productive, and the development of the HR brand. So what is it that our company wants to stand for as far as our employees go? So what would make an employee pick your company over another company is a big challenge. And we do see a lot of retention issues in the industry. We do see a lot of people will change employment very quickly. They'll go from one hotel brand to another hotel brand. And if they feel that they fit more comfortably with the vision, the mission, the culture of a new company, they will change very, very quickly. So what we're starting to see, particularly the big hotel chains, the big restaurant chains, they're really moving towards getting known as a preferred employer. And we can see around the globe now that we're starting to see different bodies recognizing who are preferred employers in different sectors globally. So obviously you want to make sure that you've got that positive reputation on a local, a national, regional and global standing. So depending on your business, having a global reputation may not be important. Maybe it's more important that your your reputation is positive with the local market. But if you're a global player like IHG or Marriott or Accor, then having a positive reputation globally is very, very important to what you do. We need to invest in innovative HR policies. We need to invest in different ways that we can manage our staff. We know that Gen Z, millennials, really value a work-life balance. So how can we ensure within this industry that we are meeting the needs of those new employees? How are we ensuring that they get that work-life balance when we know that in the hospitality industry, generally you're working on holidays, you're working at times when your friends and relatives are out partying? How do we give that work-life balance back to our staff? Extensive training and advancement opportunities. So again, mainly around providing those opportunities, providing pathways for our staff to show that, yes, you might start off in food and beverage or you might start off in housekeeping, but where can I go to from there? Where can I progress my career? How quickly can I progress my career? That's another fairly strong trait of our younger employees these days, is they want to know how quickly they can advance through an organisation. Attractive incentives. So again, incentives comes down to knowing our staff. If we know our staff, we know what they value, and therefore we can provide incentives that meet their needs. We talked about the perception of low pay in the industry before, but not everybody is motivated by pay. Some people are very happy with their pay, but they're looking for other incentives on top of that. So getting to know our employees and what they need is very, very important. And creating a good or a product or a service that employees believe is making a difference in the business landscape. So again, if our employees believe in what we do and they believe in our service, our product, then they're far more likely to instill the values of what we want to see in our staff, and therefore give the customers a better experience. So again, we've talked about most of these, so I'll quickly just touch on them again. But what are our current employees seeking in the tourism hospitality industry, or more globally, what do they seek in any job that they have? So work-life balance seems to be the number one thing that people are looking for today. They want to make sure that they've got a life outside of work. So they want to be able to attend those big moments in people's lives. They want to be able to attend their kids' school graduations. They want to be able to go to birthdays, to anniversaries. So they want that balance between work and life. We talked about salary and benefits, of course. Financial stability goes along hand in hand with salary and benefits. Job security. Again, one of the big challenges that the industry has at the moment is convincing particularly younger workers that it is a secure job. As we mentioned, more than 300 million people lost their jobs during COVID. So that doesn't really show a lot for job security. So the industry now has to get that level of confidence back in staff that there is a secure job in this industry. We've got a positive work environment. They want career progression. We talked about the good reputation. They want to be stimulated at work. They want to be challenged. They want to be actually doing things that challenge them intellectually. Remote work potential. So we're seeing a lot of people are still working remotely. It's a big challenge in Australia at the moment. A lot of companies are trying to get workers back into the office, but a lot of people are pushing against that and really want to continue that opportunity to be able to work remotely, or at least work remotely for part of the week. Very difficult in tourism and hospitality to provide remote work opportunities when we need staff on the ground to serve our customers. So this is a big challenge for the industry. And then obviously we talk about CSR, so the corporate social responsibility. So, is the company seen as doing good for the broader, the environment, for the local destination? So looking at some strategies that we believe that organisations can provide. Obviously looking at the job analysis and job design. So as I mentioned earlier, the customer's needs have changed over the last 3 years. So we need to also look at our internal customer strategy. So how we deal with our staff needs to change as well. we need to look at the tasks that we provide or we ask our staff to do. And we need to look at those tasks and do they create value to the operation? If not, do we need to do those tasks? Can we remove them? Can we add new tasks? Are the qualifications needed to complete the task accurate in their present form? So we talked earlier about this reputation that the industry is a low-skilled industry, and again, I would very strongly argue that it's not, and that the qualifications are needed in order to be able to do a lot of the jobs that are in the sector. And then finally, we talked about this as well, the compensation strategy. Are we paying the right amount of money for the right people in the right positions? So again, I think organisations really need to look at their compensation strategies. Training and development, another big area that is key moving forward. As we've mentioned, the companies are hiring a number of maybe unskilled, untrained employees at the moment because they need people to work in the organisation. So we really need to look at what training and development opportunities do we need to provide to these students, to these staff. So obviously we need to be willing and able to hire, train and retain lesser qualified resources at the moment, but people who have potential. But if we do that, then obviously our training and development strategy becomes very important, because we need to make sure that if people don't have the qualification, don't have the skills, don't have the training, that we build them up to give them those skills and knowledge that they need. So training and development, very, very important as we move forward. Workforce retention, mentioned earlier, there does tend to be quite a lot of turnover in the industry. So we need to make sure that the industry re-energizes itself, commits to that the profession has been and can continue to be a long-term career, not just a job. And I think that's something that particularly the bigger international organisations are really looking at. We need to identify our performance management strategies. And as part of that, as in HR, you need to know, as I mentioned, every person that works for your company, you need to know what drives them, what is it that gets them out of bed in the morning. And we need to be able to manage our performance strategies around those needs of our staff. And place value on the satisfaction of the internal customer, so the staff member, not merely on the external customer. If our staff are happy, if our staff are well trained, if our staff are well remunerated, then that will come out to the customer and they will give the customer a good experience. If our staff are not happy, then again, that's going to come out when they deal with our customers. So making sure that we think of our staff first, and then we think about how they impact the customer. So just some concluding thoughts, and my feeling at the moment is that particularly students that are currently studying hospitality and tourism are in a fantastic opportunity at the moment, because when you graduate in the next 6 months, 12 months, 2 years, whatever it is, the industry is going to be screaming out for good, trained, smart, and skilled employees. And you are going to be the future of the industry. So for students that are currently studying, massive opportunities moving forward for you in this industry. It's an industry that you can grow in, you can travel, you can experience the world, and you can really grow in your skills and knowledge as well. So really positive time for people that are looking to enter the industry. But some of the things that I think in the industry really needs to look at is embracing this flexibility. Embrace the technology that we've used during COVID. Embrace flexibility in how we deal with our staff, how we do our rostering, how we plan our staff needs. Make sure that we've got our finger on the pulse of labour trends. So what's happening in the industry? Where are we going to get our trained staff, our skilled, qualified staff? Critically think through how headlines impact your business. So again, when we look at things like changes to immigration policies, the work-life balance preferences, how are these things going to impact your business, and how can you use what you've got to make sure that you're making the best of these situations? Speed counts as a team. We need to be willing and ready to respond to new issues, new crises at the drop of a hat. Um, in January 2020, if you'd said to me that for the next 3 years the world is going to be shut, I would have laughed at you and thought you were a crazy person. But that's exactly what happened. A month later, we were all shut down. We were locked in our apartments, our houses. We weren't allowed out. We weren't allowed to travel. We weren't allowed to work. So we need to be able to, as these things pop up, we need to be able to move very, very quickly. We need to maintain a positive network amongst our industry peers. So the industry has copped a bit of a battering over the last couple of years, as far as the number of people that have been lost to the industry. So we need to build back as an industry that positive image of what working in hospitality and tourism means. And finally, I always live by this motto. Whenever I'm managing, whether it's in education or whether it was back in hospitality tourism industry, is putting yourself in the shoes of the employee. So thinking about how you will impact the employee. And that's the end of my presentation at the moment. So happy to open up for any questions, comments, thoughts.
Yes, Prof. Thank you very much, Prof. Really wonderful session. The way you started it from the global perspective. What are the global level implication that COVID has posed? And it was really wonderful to see the different statistics you have mentioned regarding 350 million people around the globe. They have lost the job, and how it was devastating effect on so many things. And what a nice way you have mentioned that what is the role of inflation, energy crisis, the international conflicts, how it is going to impact the organization and particularly the tourism. That was so great because the way you started it, I just was wondering what a great way to start it. And then there was a transition from moving from the global to the organizational to the employee to the employer perspective, that how it is going to be the way we want to prepare the world for tourism. And very nicely you have talked about that a lot of people, they lost the job and then they joined the other industries, and then there was the scarcity of the people to join in the tourism industry. And I love the way you just included examples from Australia, that for 2 years the border was almost closed, and how the hotels were converted to the quarantine, and what was the different things, the difficulty they faced, and how they are reviving now. And I love the way you talk that the situation in tourism industry was very different in 2019, and now in 2023 it is quite different because of a lot of technological advancement and the customers need and preferences. Now we have to shape our selves accordingly, and this is what we are expecting, that what kind of things we need to adopt and change. And then the preferred employer perspective was so great, that how can we prepare for that perspective. And then the employee perspective, that you mentioned very nicely regarding the job insecurity. Yes, that was the big threat during the COVID-19, and now we have to consider it, that how can we make sure that they don't have these kind of feelings. As in HR, we usually say it's the big predictor of turnover intention. So we need to look how we can reduce the turnover intentions of the employees, because COVID has posed a lot of challenges. Apart from all these things, I love your different phrases. You have mentioned that every encounter counter. I love that phrase. It was so great. And they can make the difference. The employee are the marketer, and employee are the face actually of the organization. They are the brand. What nice slides you have prepared, Prof. It was very precise, very comprehensive, but at the same time, it contained a lot of information, followed by your wonderful explanation. And I was just imagining that how great teacher you would be in the class when you will be explaining so much thing physically over there. I just really enjoyed the whole session with you because it was so comprehensive, full of your experiences, exposure. and I was highly engaged in that. And then you are concluding thoughts that how can we prepare for that, the way forward for it. It means it was a complete package from organization to the employee to the student. Thank you very much for such a wonderful illustration. And if you allow me, should we start with the first question, please?
Sure, no problem.
Prof, since your presentation was so great and it included so many questions already, since you have a wonderful experience and you know that what kind of question would come, so you have already addressed those of the question. Let me read the question which you have already addressed. They wanted to ask that what strategies has proven effective in attracting and retaining talent in the tourism industry. You have already answered it. And then how have tourism HR departments adjusted their training and development programs? You have already talked about it. And now the important question one of the student is asking, and you have already discussed it, but they need your illustration regarding that. Prof, thank you very much for your wonderful presentation. Prof, can you elaborate regarding what new skills and competencies are required of HR professionals in the tourism industry post COVID-19, particularly, and how can they acquire them? Yes, please.
Yeah. Look, I don't know that the skills that HR executives require has changed too much. I think it's always been the same skills that they need. However, I think the importance of treating our staff members as individuals has become more important. I think previously, we used to sort of treat all of our staff together, but I think what we've found from COVID-19, I mentioned in the presentation, is I think HR departments now really need to spend time to get to know every single employee and understand them well, understand what drives them, what is it that actually inspired them to get into the industry in the first place, what do they love about their jobs, and how can we help them to get where they want to go. So I think that's the key thing that's changed for HR, is that we really need to work on now a much more personalised situation. And I'll give you an example. This is not COVID related, but it's around how we can get things wrong if we don't understand our employees. So years ago, when I was assistant GM of a hotel, we had an assistant. We had a housekeeping executive housekeeper, and we had an assistant executive housekeeper. The executive housekeeper decided that they were going to resign and move on to a new opportunity. The assistant housekeeping manager was fantastic, so we basically asked them to step up and be the executive housekeeper. Within about 3 weeks of them taking the executive housekeeper role, they resigned, and they'd been with the company for 20 years. So we sat down and we said, "Look, what's happened? What's gone wrong in the last 3 weeks? You've been very happy and everything else." And it was that they didn't want the responsibility of being the executive housekeeper. They were quite happy doing their role. They were quite happy in what they did, and that's all they wanted to do. So, we can quite often assume that people want to be promoted. They want to be the boss. They want to move up the ladder. And then we can make those assumptions incorrectly. And actually, we're not meeting the needs of our employees. So luckily, we were able to talk to that employee and say, "Look, okay, fair enough. Let's put you back into your previous role, and we'll hire a new executive housekeeper." And that person was very happy. They went back into their role, and they retired about 10 years later. So so we really need to understand it. And I think today more than ever, younger workers today, they want different things to the staff from the past. So for HR, I think it really is about developing those individual plans, those individual training and development plans, identifying what their needs are, rather than just providing company-wide training and development.
Yes, wonderful answer. Thank you very much, Prof. And I think that's the what you referred is the specific training, and that should be based on individual needs, whatever the needs and requirement is. And very nice suggestion, because now the world has changed and even it is evolving with a very rapid way that we need to prepare ourselves. There is one question, but that is I will be asking later on, which is related to the AI and advancement of technology, which is very pertinent as well. So because of even that, we need to constantly evolve our planning strategy, the development strategies in order to cope with the new skills. But before that, let me, Prof, ask another question which they are asking very well. One of the faculty member, they want to ask that the Prof, thank you for your great presentation. And nowadays, the big issue for the HR department is to deal with the mental health and well-beings of employees. So please, what measures have been taken to ensure that mental health and well-being of employee in the tourism industry? And particularly, what do you recommend for HR department to support the mental health and well-being of employees? Yes, please.
Yeah, look, very very important issue that's growing and has grown exponentially since COVID. I think one of the things that I've seen around mental health within different organisations is looking to be able to provide the professional help that your staff may require. So um, I can see in a lot of institutions here in Australia, particularly. They are now outsourcing a lot of that support, that mental health support, rather than trying to provide it within the company. So they're now referring their staff to professionals that are skilled and trained in the different areas, because as we know, there's lots of different areas of mental health that we need to look at. So I think from a HR perspective, um, you can't be an expert in everything when you in HR, and I think mental health is something that is really important and should be handled by people that are properly trained and have the expertise to help people. So we're seeing a lot of these processes being, as I said, outsourced to companies that can deal with those sorts of issues. So, and I think that works quite well as well, because I think in the past, what we've probably seen with issues around mental health is staff may not necessarily want to open up about the issues that they're having, because they feel that could impact their role. It could impact their boss's perception of them. So, having these services provided by a third party, um, our staff can feel more comfortable that they are talking to someone that's external to the company, and it's not necessarily going to come back to affect them within the company. So I think that's probably the way to go, is to make sure that we've got the external resources that we need to direct our people to.
Yes, Prof. Thank you very much. Wonderful. And really, this a global phenomena, and now we have to consider it more in an efficient way. That how can we have a wonderful strategies in order to make sure the mental health, as you mentioned as well. And now, Prof, the very important question, which is very interesting and nowadays, and it is pertinent, the role of the AI. So one of the students, they have asked the question that, Prof, please guide us regarding the role of the artificial intelligence, particular the robotics. They are functioning in the hospitality and tourism industry. Don't you think we are losing the jobs because of the robots and the contactless things? So what do you recommendation for me as a tourism student? Yes, please.
Yeah, look, it's definitely finding a balance. I think what we need to look at is what is what type of hotel do you have, or what type of establishment do you have, and what do the guests want. Now, I think AI is going to rapidly evolve. We're seeing it rapidly evolve anyway. I can see a point where you're going to have your thumbprint will be on the IHG database or the Marriott database, and you won't need a room key anymore. You won't need to go to reception. You'll just go to your room. You'll put your thumb on the door, and you'll be able to enter your room. Facial recognition, so your eyes or whatever. So I can see that being rolled out reasonably soon. But again, I think it depends on the type of establishment you are. If you're a hotel and you're a business hotel, then I think those contactless points are important, because if you're staying in a business hotel, really you just want to get to your room, you want to check in, you want to have a shower, you want to go to sleep, you leave first thing in the morning to go to meetings. So you're not really concerned too much about that interaction with staff. But if you're in a hotel that's more in a tourist destination and you're there with leisure tourists, they want to talk to people. They're still going to want to check in with someone at the front counter. They're going to want to ask recommendations for where would you like, where should I eat? Where do I go to do this? So I think it's going to depend on the type of hotel. From a staffing point of view, I think the physical staff, human staff, are going to become more important in a way that the customers are going to still demand that they have that interaction. I have been to some hotels that are sort of, adopting robots and robot concierge and these types of things. You know, I don't feel very comfortable in those sort of establishments yet. So I think there's going to be a transition phase, but I think what's going to be important is that the human contact will actually become much more important, and the training and development, the skills of those people that are interacting will always be there. I would hate to think of a future where the human is taken out of hospitality, because it's not very hospitable if the human is not there. So, it's same for restaurants. If you go to a fine dining establishment, you don't want to have to scan a QR code and order off your phone. You want the waiter to explain where's the ingredients from this meal come from. What wine should I have with this meal? You're going to still demand that personal interaction. So I think there's a place for AI, and I think it will come. But I don't think it's the doom and gloom that some people think.
Wow, wonderful answer, Prof. Thank you very much. And I love the way you explain it that we need the human interaction. Of course, we need explanation, we need guidance, and very nicely you have given example of that. Sometimes the guest, the customer, they usually ask that where to eat, where to find the different things, and for that we need the human interaction. And I love the way you just talked about that. Yes, AI is there, but human interaction is very important, and I think we should rescale ourselves in order to fit in that industry. And more importantly, the computer or the any robots cannot replace the human unless we remains the human. And this is what the Jim Rohn mentioned, that the problem with the human is can beat always the technology and the robots as well, because that's the beauty of the human. And definitely wonderful points you have highlighted of the interaction. We need interaction, we need explanation, and there is a definite role of the HR, the human resource. And now, Prof, since we have the time limitation, one last question. This is from our faculty member, and they want to ask that, Prof, please, would you like to share with us your recommendation on how to build a culture of resilience and adaptability while considering the challenges posed by the pandemic for the HR department? Yes, please.
That's a very good question. And if I had the correct answer to that, I probably could be a billionaire. I think that's the question that everybody is struggling with. It is quite challenging, as I said, with the way things are changing at the moment. I think the key thing we have to do in HR and within our organisations, hospitality tourism organisations, is recognise that change is going to be there. It's constantly, things are going to be changing. Our customer demographics are going to be changing. Our customer needs are going to change. We're going to face a whole range of risks and challenges, and who knows when or if the next pandemic comes. So I think we just need to really train ourselves and our staff to be resilient and not be scared of change. And I think that's probably the biggest problem. Is a lot of people are very comfortable in what they do, and they don't want to see change because they like what they do. So we just need to make sure that our people are ready for change, and they're able to recognise when change is for a good reason.
Yes, Prof. Wonderful. And now you have connected back to your slide as well, in which it was mentioned that change and uncertainty is the constant. And it is the human nature actually which is inclined towards the comfort zone, and they don't want to change. But the change is always better. It is good if we take it in a positive way. As you just mentioned, your in wonderful presentation that COVID-19 has posed a lot of problem for us, but it has also accelerated the technological aspect, which is the good thing. And even now we are doing this webinar is just as the outcome of the COVID-19, that it has accelerated these kind of online webinars and technological different platforms available for the knowledge sharing, which is, I think, the good sign as well. So, Prof, really wonderful, and thank you very much for such a wonderful presentation, explanation, and followed by the wonderful question and answer session. Really, I enjoyed this session with you. It was a great learning experience for me, and I hope our audience from around the globe have enjoyed your presentation and question answer session. Prof, at the end of this session, we ask our each guest regarding their message to the world. So, Prof, what is your message to the world as a speaker, author, teacher, researcher, trainer, learner, professional, and educator? Yes, please.
Look, I think the biggest thing for me at the moment is that our industry, the hospitality tourism industry, has been smashed over the last couple of years. But it is an extremely exciting industry to work in. There's an immense amount of opportunities for people within the industry to you can change your career. Every few years you can go into a different area of the hotel or hospitality. So I think that the industry has changed and will continue to change, but it is still a fantastic industry to work in. I think there's massive opportunities for young people to get into this sector.
Wonderful, Prof. Thank you very much. And the people who are concerned, particularly the student, they were concerned regarding their future in tourism industry. But now you have paved the way for them that yes, there is a lot of opportunity over there, and they need not to worry regarding their future in the tourism industry. Because, and I love one of your phrase during the presentation that. Being in tourism industry, you would love to travel, you would see different people, and you will be enjoying your life. And this is what you are doing it, and we are watching you, and we love the way you are contributing and the way you are sharing your knowledge and traveling the world around the globe. Just because of this being in this industry, you are enjoying your life and work, which is called the work life balance as well. So you are portraying that you through your life. Thank you very much, Prof, once again. And to the audience that do follow our distinguished guest speaker through his research work, and you can email him for future learning and guidance. He is very generous and always ready to help the people. Moreover, wonderful explanation and powerful content which the Prof has already shared will help you to learn and develop yourself regarding the role of the HR and how can you improve yourself. So that's all we have time for today. And thank you once again to Professor Scott Richardson for your precious time and sharing your knowledge with us. And if you have any additional question about information shared today, please email us or connect to the speaker directly through his email or maybe through social media. You can reach him. Thank you all for your support and liking our sessions. Stay tuned as many sessions are on the way. Please do not miss any session at next session. Take care of yourself. Bye bye.